Let's get more on all of this. We're joined by Alexey Muraviev. He's an Associate Professor of National Security and Strategic Studies at Curtin University. Alexey, given how things are going, do you feel optimistic that there is a peace deal to be reached, that the two sides can somehow meet in the middle? And if so, what concessions do you think Ukraine needs to be ready to make?
What I'm optimistic about is the fact that the conversation has started, something we couldn't envisage half a year ago, let alone a year ago. And that's obviously a pathway towards some sort of peace settlement, whether we're talking about a real and proper long-lasting peace deal within our foresight. I think there are still too many conditions and too many uncertainties that I can easily see preventing it from occurring sooner than later or interfering at some point in time. In terms of what Ukraine may be asked to give up, well, look, I mean, we need to understand the realities. The realities are driven by battlefield conditions, and Ukraine is on the retreat. Yes, they still hold in some parts of the Russian territory in the Kursk region, even though they have lost control over 60% of what they initially managed to occupy, but they continue to lose their own ground. And in this sense, Ukraine has very limited bargaining power in terms of trying to convince donors that they can turn the tide of war in their favor, because we've been hearing it for quite some time and nothing has happened to the disadvantage of the Ukrainians. They really don't have much of a bargaining power with their principal sponsor, the United States, and this escalatory rhetoric between Trump and Zelensky clearly is not helping. So in this situation, Ukraine can settle for minimal collateral losses in terms of territory, in terms of post-war reconstruction. Clearly, the Russians, as a minimum, want to have full control over the 4 areas they consider now as part of their territory. They're not even discussing the status of Crimea. Whether Putin's appetite would grow because his forces continue to be on the move, and I don't think he has any interest in ending his advance soon. Well, time will tell, and it will also very much depend on how flexible the Ukrainians are going to be on the matter.
And in terms of these discussions going on, do you feel like they're being driven by the Americans, driven by Trump, or is Trump being manipulated by a wily and experienced Putin? What's your take?
Well, clearly Putin is far more experienced than Trump, and certainly in this sense, I'm not really subscribing to what Vladimir Zelensky is trying to establish as a narrative that Putin fears Trump. I think Putin and Trump feel very comfortable with each other. In terms of who manipulates whom, we need to understand that when it comes to Russia-US strategic dialogue, which seems to be resuming right now, this is not just about Ukraine. They have too many other issues to consider, and the list it's pretty significant, ranging from questions of strategic nuclear arms control to AI, to climate, to the Arctic, to the Middle East, to North Korea, to China, and so on and so forth. So for them to consider the whole spectrum that they need to discuss, they obviously will be developing some sort of framework that would allow them to operate and function on so many other matters, not just Ukraine. And that's why Trump actually wants to fix the Ukrainian problem now, so he can move on with his conversations with the Russians on other matters, which are more closer to his heart than the Ukrainian conflict, which he considered to be of Joe Biden's making. And that, in my view, what explains his sort of flexibility, if not coziness, if not appeasement towards Putin, not because he wants to trade Ukraine in exchange for something else, but because he understands there are more important points that he wants to discuss and raise with the Russians. So if Ukraine will become the sticking point, he won't be able to progress on some other matters, including his ultimate goal on how to contain China.
Okay, all right. Alexey Muraviev, thank you so much for joining us on the NewsHour.